Literature is an art of expression, an expression of emotions and feelings through words. Greetings, everyone, and I am here in the third edition of Orange City Literature Fest Orange City Literature Fest, organized by SGR Knowledge Foundation in association with GH Raisoni University, powered by Raisoni Group of Institutions. I'm Neha Thavrani, delighted to be your anchor for today's session, Nehru's hero, Dilip Kumar, by Lord Meghnad Desai, in conversation with Mr. Shabbir Shakir. Born on 10th July 1940 in Baroda, India, he studied at the University of Bombay and wrote his PhD at the University of Pennsylvania. Lord Desai has taught at the London School of Economics since 1965. He was made a professor of economics in 1983 and he established the Center for the Study of Global Governance in 1992. Meghnad Desai loves to cook, watch, and write about Bollywood movies and shuttles between London, Delhi, and Goa. He pursues controversies on economics, history, and anything else which catches his attention. He has been a British parliamentary sitting in the House of Lords. He has written over 25 books, over 200 articles in learned journals, and hundreds of newspaper columns in the UK and India. It's an honor to have you with us, Lord Meghnad Desai, sir. And this gets even more delightful as we have Mr. Shabbir Shakir, who will be in conversation with him as the moderator. Shabbir Shakir, sir, is currently the District Governor of Rotary District 3030, covering an area from Nagpur to Nashik. He completed his BE and honors from BITS Pilani. Thereafter, for a few years, he served some of the very well-known organizations of the Indian corporate world like Eicher Motors Limited, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, Standard Batteries Limited, and Crompton Greaves Limited before starting his own. He is into the business of printing and packaging and distribution of photography equipment. One of the things he's passionate about is blood donation, which he himself had donated 138 times till date. I once again welcome you, Meghnad sir, and I welcome you, Shabbir sir. Now, my dear audience, you are about to experience a conversation between two very dynamic individuals. So without skipping a moment, I humbly invite Shabbir sir to lead us ahead.
Thank you, Neha. And at the outset, Lord Desai, let me tell you it's a pleasure and an honor to have a person of your eminence amongst us. Since I really don't know how much time, we've seen you donning different hats. We see you as a politician in the Labour Party. We see you as an economist. We see you as a person steeped in literature. At times, we really wonder what is it that you are not good at. While talking to you just before, we started this in the official format, I realized that I am an extremely old man compared to this young, enthusiastic individual that I am speaking to. It's a pleasure and an honor, sir. And yes, today out of the three hats, the hat that we are going to make you wear is the one in which you are steeped in that literature mold. The book that we talk about, Nehru's hero, Dilip Kumar. Well, intriguing, the title itself. So my first question, sir, Nehru, so is the book about politics? Dilip Kumar, is it about cinema? Or it is neither and it's all about literature? Sir, to you.
Well, it is about both. I had an idea that I wanted to talk to Dilip Kumar about his films. A friend of mine called Kumar Shahani, who is an avant-garde film director, he was going to film us. And I was going to ask Dilip Kumar about certain episodes in his films, which I had seen, and tell me what was he thinking when he did that. Well, all that became not possible. So because he said his health would not do it. So I wrote this book, a desktop book, interpreting his major films, which he did when Nehru was alive, as a way of knowing about Nehruvian India, Nehru's India. Nehru's India and Nehru's idea of India was reflected in the role Dilip Kumar played, and the way he carried off this ideal of an Indian man uh, in Nehru's India. Now, so in a sense, it is a very unusual book in cinema. I don't think anybody else has dealt with cinema like I did. I took 10 films of the many that he had done during the 1950s, and I described each of them. I took his character and more or less talked about what was happening in India at that time, how it related to Nehru and so on. And Naya Daur, for example, I mean, the one contrast is the film called Mela, which he did in late 40s, where he is a peasant. But as a peasant, he's beaten up, and it's all in those days, only tragedies worked. You had to have a tragedy with lots of good songs. You move 10 years on, and there's a film called Daya Daur in sort of 1957. Bihar Chopra made it. And in Daya Daur, he is a Tanga driver. And as a Tanga driver, he's threatened by a bus coming out to take people from a railway station to wherever they are. He feels that. So he and his friends build a shortcut road to defeat the machine. Now, that shortcut road was agreeing with what Nehru was doing about community development, road building, things like that. It also was we debated about machine versus man, as it were. Should we be anti-machinery? No, we can't be anti-machinery because India wanted to industrialize. Now, for a film to inspire that kind of debate was very novel. But we were all, we had very few, we had no television at that time, so we had no other entertainment. Films were our one entertainment. And between young boys and young girls, you could always talk about films. That was a safe area, so that was very good as well. So another film was Ganga Jamuna. In Ganga Jamuna, he was a sort of a peasant, but he was wronged by the system, by the zamindars and so on. So he becomes a dacoit. His brother is a policeman. And then being a Dilip Kumar film, he doesn't win. Law has to take its course, and he is finally killed. But the idea was that he had a legitimate concern. So while Raj Kapoor had made Jis Desh Mein Ganga Behti Hai, Dilip Kumar made Ganga Jamuna, and a very interesting contrast in terms of it. And Raj Kapoor played an innocent man who joins a gang of dacoits and converts them. Dilip Kumar was the dacoit, and it's a very, very interesting contrast. So anyway, I wrote about different films that he made in the 50s, mainly sort of contemporaneous with Nehru's career as a prime minister, 47 to 64. And I tried to interpret India in terms of Dilip Kumar's films. And he liked it very much. He liked it very much because I had no gossip. I did not claim to know him or his friends. I said, this is my take on. I called it Nehru's Hero because that summarized the common frame in the 10 films that I was describing. So in a sense, it is an experiment, and I don't think anybody else has repeated that experiment, but I very much think that that's one way of looking at films as a reflection of contemporary politics. And of course, also it was true that Nehru liked Dilip Kumar very much, and he often used him in campaigns. He asked him to go to campaigns, especially when 1957 election, Krishna Menon was fighting the North Bombay seat for Lok Sabha. all the Bollywood walas went and supported Krishna Menon, and Dilip Kumar was one of them. So there was an actual thing about, but in a sense, calling it Nehru's hero made it much more attention, got it much more attention as a serious book on films. Had I called it something about Dilip Kumar, only film walas would have seen it. But calling
I
it
would
Nehru's
like,
hero,
I would, yeah,
you know, no, please, go ahead.
yes, I would actually like to take you to the drawing board. Like,
Yeah.
for example, the different books that you've written, which are not exactly in the genre of economics. There's Marx's Revenge, there is Rethinking Islam, Route to
Yeah.
All Evil, Dead on Time, Rediscovery of India. But, Lord Desai, this particular book is different in its genre, in the sense that we've seen hundreds and thousands of cinema which portray politics. But nobody has ever even thought of what you've done, which is showing politics through the prism of cinema. How did this idea come to you to begin with?
As I said, Dilip Kumar, who used to edit the Times of India, a great intellectual, he died young. He and I were friends. One day we were sitting in the India International Center, and we were both sort of Nehru fans. So we started talking about Nehru, and of course we were both Dilip Kumar fans as well. And the idea emerged somehow that more in Dilip Kumar's film than any other person's films, you could see this thing reflected. So in a sense, when I first wanted to ask him questions, it was really about that. And he was very, very welcoming when I first went to see him. We talked about 3 hours. But then, he couldn't do in a longer exercise. But I had this idea, thanks to Dilip Kumar, you can't imagine how much films were a big part of our cultural life than it is now. Because now there is television and there is all sorts of other media. We had films. And and we saw every film which came out, sometimes trying to first day, first show sort of thing. But we always talked about films among ourselves, among friends. And, for example, when Pyasa came out, all big discussion about Pyasa and Gurudat, because there are songs which are very pessimistic about India. Jinena Zahai Hind Par Wo Kahan Hai was what Sahir Ludhianvi wrote. So it was very critical. Mid-50s, Nehru was prime minister, but it was very, very critical of why India had not done good things. And we would debate that. And then there were other films. So in a sense, I am conveying, of course, I wrote the book several years later, but I'm conveying what we felt. And I'm glad I did it because, as I said, nobody else has done it. And so there's something I wanted to say, the way I saw films, which was, if not unique to me, unique to my group of, my age group, and the way we saw these things. You see, by that time, I had not lived in India for God knows how many years. I wrote it in 2004. I'd been out of India for 35 years. But what's more, it led to my second marriage. So the book was very lucky for me that I met the woman I married, Kishwar Ahluwalia. She was the editor of my book. And that's how we met, and that's how we got married. So it has been Dilip Kumar has been very lucky for me. And we also became very good friends.
Tell me now that you talk about the personal relation with Dilip Kumar, you seem to have made statements, a lot of them, that you used to mimic his dressing style, his hairstyle, the way he spoke, the dialogues that he said. Did Dilip Kumar ever know?
We all did, you see. I mean, we all thought that, the way to look was, okay, some people tried Devanand. But Dilip Kumar was the ideal. We all wanted to look like Dilip Kumar. We observed the way he spoke. But one thing very interesting about him was that he never played a crook. And he was never cruel to the heroines that he was acting with. I mean, he maintained a certain image of the good man, even when he was a dacoit or thing like that. By and large, he was the decent option. Whereas Devan and the Raj Kapoor always had a little bit sort of off again. And so he was very, very much our ideal. And of course, when I got to know him, I was very lucky to get to know him. He liked the book very much. I remember somebody told me he went into a bookshop in Khan Market and said, "Hamari kitab kaisi chal rahi hai?" And in his autobiography, there is a footnote saying he thinks my book was the best book on him. Just one little footnote. So and he helped me launch the book in Mumbai in 2004 February. Vajayantimala came and he was there. And he was a tremendously nice person. Then he came to London. I interviewed him at the National Film Theatre. And he's brilliant. And when you talk to him, he was so lovely to talk to, very intellectual, very nice person. And of course, Sairaji was also very, very hospitable person. I think, in a sense, if you think about it, we had three heroes, Raj Kapoor, Dilip Kumar, Devanand. The man who lived longest was Dilip Kumar. And that is thanks to Sairaji. It was Saira Banu who looked after our hero. And he went to 99. And it's an amazing thing that he did that. So, in a sense, he became more than just a film star with a lot of us. He was a way, way above a film star. And that's because he chose his characters very carefully. And he worked when somebody gave him a screenplay, the story is he worked on the screenplay, he pointed out, and he had Nitin Bose permanently as his director. He paid Nitin Bose throughout as his directorial advisor because Nitin Bose had directed him in a film called Milan, Tagore's novel Nauka Dubi. And if you see that film, it's 1945. The first Dilip Kumar film I saw when I was 5 years old. It's a brilliant film. And Nitin Bose, he told me, Nitin Bose asked him, he says, think of this situation. You are in a train, you're reading a letter which it has told you your mother has died. Now you have to emote without saying a single word. So he was being sort of, he developed his acting talent that way. And he was, I think, and I said this in my obituary that I wrote, that he, I think in my view, was one of the greatest film actors in the world.
And did he ever tell you?
Sorry?
I'm sorry, you were saying something.
Well, go ahead. No, what were you saying?
Did he? I wonder. Did he ever tell you that he took great pride in the fact that a person of your stature, your eminence, used to mimic him at one time, and you, of all the people, had to be the person to write an autobiography, sort of a book on him? Did he ever explain himself?
I think he didn't tell me that, but I know from the mention in his autobiography that he liked what I said very much. And I mean, in a sense, copying him and things like that was universal in my generation of people. He must have known. I mean, after all, there was a succession of heroes, Rajendra Kumar and Manoj Kumar and so on, who were carbon copies of Dilip Kumar and got to be famous. Dilip Kumar just on his own because he invented all these things. When you look at the previous generation, Ashok Kumar as a hero or KL Saigal as a hero, there's nothing like that look that Dilip Kumar, so a lot of hair, sort of thing, and he's always maintained this very slim persona, and you see Adami, in which is in the late 1960s, he still looks immaculately thin, fit person, and later on he went on to do sort of senior roles. But Shakti, for example, in Shakti you have him and Amitabh. And although Amitabh
Yes.
is a new version, and Dilip Kumar is just very, very good in that film. And I think it's a fantastic film because you see two very good actors. And in a sense, Amitabh was still getting his style together. And he had obviously picked up some stuff from Dilip Kumar. But it's an amazing film because it is, again, in which he is a policeman, but he has done something wrong to alienate his son. But ultimately, the son gets killed. Sorry, the mother gets killed, and it was, and the son gets killed. And the amazing thing was that he maintained that idea of the hero being ultimately clean, not above blame, but clean with good intentions, who may be trapped to do bad things, but he doesn't willingly do bad things, which was a very
Now at this point,
yeah.
I see this particular statement of yours in different forms. You've repeated it quite a few times. So here I want a candid answer from you. In your own words, Dilip Kumar, you've shown as an embodiment of the Nehruvian idealism. So, which Dilip Kumar is this? The real Dilip Kumar or the real Dilip Kumar? The one that we show in movies or the one in person?
I think one can only talk about the real Dilip Kumar. I'm concerned with the real Dilip Kumar. I never ever made any comment on his private life. I think it is not my purpose in writing that book. There are books about people who claim to be his friends and all that, and all kinds of gossip. His second marriage and all that. None of that. None of that is my concern. I only know the real Dilip Kumar. It's the real Dilip Kumar that I interacted with, who interacted with all of us. I'm interested in that person, but I know that the real Dilip Kumar chose those roles. He had a choice what to do and what not to do. He could have typified himself like Devanand did, as always slightly crooked, charming, slightly crooked, kind of on the edge of crime sort of person. And so did Raj Kapoor, the Awara character and so on. But Dilip Kumar did not. And, in a sense, thereby lies both a kind of a career choice and something in the real Dilip Kumar, which he didn't want to do certain kinds of characters because he would not feel comfortable with them. And that, there's a good book about Dilip Kumar yet to be written. I don't know whether I'll ever write it myself, but in a sense, he took his work more seriously than any other Indian film actor I know, or Hindi film actor. I don't know about the Telugu and Tamil and Bangla. And of course, he was personally a very nice person. Lovely person to know, great gentleman, very nice spoken, very hospitable, just tremendous. But that is, you see somebody and you never know the full thing. But I know the real Dilip Kumar, the film Dilip Kumar, and I think he is the person I'm writing about in Nehru's Hero.
So how easy or how difficult it was that you knew the real person and you knew the person in cinema, the real person. But to keep one away from the other while penning that book down must have been really difficult, or was it not?
No, it wasn't because, in a sense, I met the real Dilip Kumar a couple of years before I wrote the book. You see, I met him in 1997. I remember going to his house with Kumar Shahani, and he had just been given the Nishane-Imtiaz by Pakistan, and there was a Shiv Sena protest outside his house and so on, and I went to see him. And although I got to know him more after I wrote the book, at the time I wrote the book, I hadn't really known the real Dilip Kumar that much. I didn't want to know the real Dilip Kumar. I had read all the newspaper accounts and all that, so, from childhood onwards. No, I was really interested in the characters.
So, now, as you look at things, he was an embodiment of the Nehruvian idealism, as you said.
Yeah.
Now, did it end there, or do you also feel that his characterization of roles in his films affected people in a positive manner? Means reaffirmed that idealism?
No, all of us, well, most of us who were young at that time and watching films, the ideal that he put forward was very influential. He was not the only ideal. As I said, there was Devanand, there was Raj Kapoor, at least for the Hindi film goers. Those were the three big things. But in a sense, fact that he would not do some things, we were very impressed by, and we always want to emulate him. I certainly had a great time for him, and some of the films I saw several times. As I said, in Andaz I saw 15 times or more. It's an amazing film. It's almost the perfect Hindi film ever made. But in a sense, he just was an amazingly great actor. And
as you said, his characterization, the roles that he was given in each film, suited that of a hero and idealist.
Yeah, he obviously played characters in Udan Khatola or things like that, which are kind of, romantic, slightly Ruritanian things, Kohinoor, Udan Khatola, and so on. But the characters he played, which were contemporary social characters, were just amazingly well played, amazingly well thought out. And in a sense, it had a message for us, whether he was a message for everybody. We were watching as young people then, and getting our lessons of life from Dilip Kumar. And I think in a sense, obviously later on there have been other actors, especially Amitabh Bachchan, who is clearly a giant of Hindi cinema. And I guess someday somebody will write a book about him. But for me, it was Dilip Kumar was central to my growing up, and so I'm very grateful of what he did for us.
Lord Desai, you wrote this book in 2004.
Yeah.
And that was the time when Nehru was, a synonym for, as you reflect in the book, idealism and hope.
Yeah.
And that related to the Dilip Kumar movies, which, as a fact, reflected all of these things. And you connected the two together.
Yeah.
In 2021, at this stage when a lot of history books have been rewritten, and Nehru, to many, is not seen in the same light as he was maybe 20 years back. If you were to write this book all over again, how would it be different?
Well, the book is not about Nehru. as such. It was Nehru's idea of India as embodied in the characters Dilip Kumar played. It is not an evaluation of Nehru. Nehru, okay, it uncritically says Nehru is great. It doesn't actually question him. I would say that when I left India in 1961 to go to America, the only prime minister I had was Nehru. And he died 3 years later before I came back. So I only known one prime minister, and obviously we were also critical of Nehru. I mean, I'm not talking about what I thought of him, but we were critical of Nehru, some of us, about basically the growth rate being very low and this and that. I went to the inaugural meeting of Swatantra Party in Mumbai just to listen to Jayaprakash Narayan criticizing Nehru. I mean, Nehru was not uncriticized in his own days. I mean, let me put it this way. I mean, in a sense, the Congress, in his own interest, has painted him larger than life. He was a great prime minister. He was our first prime minister. We had known any other prime minister. But we knew that he had made mistakes. I grew up in Bombay, where the division of Bombay between Maharashtra and Gujarat was very controversial in 1957. There were people marching, Samyukta Maharashtra's Halaj Paije. And in that, there were people shot, and the Hutatma Chowk in Mumbai is because people died marching for, and Nehru was reluctant to grant that. So it is not that, and of course the whole China thing. I was there when we had Hindi Chini Bye Bye, and then I had gone by the time the 62 thing took place. But, at no stage was Nehru not criticized. But in a sense, we knew that he was the prime minister. He was going to be, he remained prime minister. And by and large, there was more approval of him. More people liked him. I would say that no other prime minister of India has ever been liked that much while in office. Let me put it that way. You have this in American history, has a British history, what's called revisionism. You revalue the old heroes, and Washington, who was the first president of America, was such and such, and Jefferson was a slave owner, and things like that. And so you always reconsider in light of contemporary life. You reevaluate the past. And people, I'm reevaluating Nehru, but at that time, we debated him quite a lot. We talked about him quite a lot. We criticized him. Was socialism fast enough, or whatever it is? Why is socialist pattern of society? Anyway, all those things. But there was an idea that he was an uncorrupt person dedicated to progress of India, and he was going to build a better India. There was no doubt about his intentions, his kind of straightforwardness, his honesty, and his greatness. He was, for us, a great prime minister. And given that other newly independent Commonwealth countries hadn't done that well, let's face it, India did better than most newly independent foreign countries. I mean, look at what happened to South Africa after Mandela. There is that difference that however we may de-evaluate Nehru, at that time, he was good, he was great, we liked him. As I said, we did criticize him, but we liked him. Yeah. Now, so that is the thing one can say. Now, of course, the roles that
not Desai. Not Desai. I mean, talking to you was so interesting. Believe me that we've run completely out of time. So before I sum up, would you like to say something in conclusion? It's already 30 minutes and it was like 5 minutes for us.
Let me say, I enjoyed writing that book. I enjoyed meeting with Dilip Kumar. And I think it is a sign about what life was like in the 1950s, as recollected by me, sort of 40 years later. But I think it remains a image of India, Indian films, the great actor Dilip Kumar, and the great Prime Minister Nehru. And I think if people are curious, they should go and read it.
Very, very, very beautifully put, Lord Desai. And yes, it was a most interesting session that we've had. And as I said, these 30 minutes passed as if it was just 5 minutes. Lord Desai, thank you so very much. And yes, the way you explained things out, I am,
I'm a teacher. I'm ultimately a teacher. I'm a teacher.
Yeah, you are a teacher. London School of Economics. How can I forget that? How can I forget that? And truly, each student of yours must have been the most fortunate person, and everyone who listens to this wonderful talk of yours is going to be equally fortunate. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege to have you with us. If there is any regret, it is that you haven't been with us physically, which we would have loved to, have. And I still have hope that one day you'll come to Nagpur, grace us. And yes,
Nagpur. I was saying to Neha, I have not been to Nagpur to my regret, but I've heard a lot of Nagpur, and I have friends who are from Nagpur. So, Mr. Gadkari, who's a minister, he's well known to me, and of course, I would love to come to Nagpur. Nagpur,
yeah,
Santara.
I just hope.
Santara? Nagpur, Santara. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know whether it is the Santara, whether it is Mr. Gadkari or Mr. Raisoni who will be able to attract you to come to Nagpur, but we would like to see you here.
Absolutely. Will do. That's a promise.
Yeah. And summing up, all I would like to say is that here is a person who's written a book of a genre which has never been done before, and I don't think it will be done again. And the idea of showing politics through the prism of cinema, I think it's been done for the first time and the only time till now. So, Lord Desai, a pleasure having you with us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you, Neha. Thank you, all the staff. Thank you very much.
Yes, it was an absolute pleasure to listen to such great people. I personally enjoyed the session a lot. And at the outset, I would like to thank you, Lord Meghnad Desai, sir, and Mr. Shabbir, sir, for joining us today. And we wish to get you here both again and be equally enlightened as we all are today. And for my dear massive audience, I'm sure that after witnessing this conversation, you all are taking home an enriched version of yourself, just as I will. Thank you for joining us today. Until I see you again, this is Neha Thavrani signing off.
Raisoni Group, a vision beyond.